October 2010. A Florida courtroom fell silent as an 18-year-old girl stood before a judge waiting to hear her fate. What comes next shocks everyone in the room. 2 consecutive 25-year sentences. Fines exceeding $1 million. But the sentence itself was just the beginning. What this young woman would face behind those prison walls, the daily reality she would endure for over a decade, would make some people question everything they thought they knew about punishment and mercy. This is the story of Misty Croslin. And by the end of this video, you might see the death penalty in a completely different light. January 2011, Putnam County, Florida. Misty Croslin faced Judge Wendy Berger for the second time in just months. The evidence was overwhelming. Video footage showed her selling prescription oxycodone to undercover officers. The prosecution called it an open and shut case. Judge Berger had options. She could sentence Misty as a youthful offender, which meant 6 years. After all, Misty had just turned 18 when these crimes occurred. No violent history, no criminal empire, just $3,000 worth of pills sold to someone claiming to be in pain. Instead, Judge Berger handed down another 25-year sentence on top of the 25 years Misty had already received in St. Johns County. The fines totaled over $1.5 million. Critics immediately called it excessive, pointing out that sentences like this typically go to drug kingpins moving millions in product while running violent operations. But here is what most people do not know. This was never really about the drugs. February 9, 2009, a date that changed everything. 5-year-old Haley Cummings disappeared from her father's trailer in Satsuma, Florida. She has never been found. As of December 2025, it has been almost 16 years and investigators treat her case as a homicide. Misty Croslin was the last person to see Haley alive. She was 17, dating Haley's father Ronald Cummings, babysitting that night while he worked. According to Misty, she put the children to bed around 8 p.m. When she woke at 3 a.m., Haley was gone. The back door stood propped open with a cinder block. From the beginning, investigators saw problems with her story. Details changed. Timelines shifted. She married Ronald just 1 month after Haley vanished, though they divorced within months. Law enforcement believed Misty held the key to solving the case, but they had no body, no physical evidence, nothing they could charge her with. Then came the drug sting in 2010. Sheriff Jeff Hardy stated publicly what many suspected. Getting Misty behind bars meant they could question her regularly. The drug charges became leverage, a way to keep pressure on the one person they believed knew what really happened to that little girl. The punishment for selling pills became the punishment for something that was never proven in court. And that something would define the rest of her life. Lowell Correctional Institution in Ocala, Florida. The largest women's prison in the United States. This is where Misty Croslin has spent the last 15 years. This is where she will remain until June 2031 unless something changes. And this is where the story gets dark. Because in December 2020, the U.S. Department of Justice released findings from a 2.5-year investigation into Lowell. What they documented was nothing short of horrifying. According to official reports, there was reasonable cause to believe conditions at Lowell violate the 8th Amendment. The investigation found that staff sexually abused prisoners frequently and systematically. Between 2015 and 2019 alone, investigators reviewed 161 cases of reported sexual misconduct. Only 8 resulted in arrests. The Justice Department report detailed how officers forced inmates to perform sexual acts, how women were assaulted and then discouraged from reporting. When they did speak up, many were placed in isolation during investigations, losing their jobs and privileges. After weeks in confinement, most dropped their complaints just to get out. One case involved a sergeant repeatedly accused of abuse over several years. Despite multiple complaints, he continued working at Lowell. He only left in 2019 after being arrested for molesting children outside the prison. Former inmates describe conditions that go beyond constitutional violations. Inadequate food, substandard medical care, violence without accountability. Educational programs that once existed are now largely gone. But describing conditions is one thing. Living them every single day for 15 years is something else entirely. In messages from prison, Misty describes her daily existence. She works to pass the time because there is nothing else. She stays to herself to avoid trouble. She says conditions are deteriorating and they do not feed inmates adequately. She feels isolated after losing her mother while incarcerated. She tried getting her GED. She attended classes and studied for months. Then she was removed from the program because she had too much time left on her sentence. Think about that for a moment. Denied education because her sentence is too long. Misty turned 33 this December 2024. She has spent almost half her life locked away. When she is released in 2031, she will be 39 years old. Her entire 20s are gone. Most of her 30s are gone. All of it was spent in a facility that federal investigators found constitutionally inadequate. Every morning she wakes up in a place where abuse is documented and systematic, where speaking up can mean retaliation, where violence happens and accountability rarely follows. And she knows she has 6 more years ahead of her, over 2,000 more days of this existence. Which brings us to the question this video set out to answer. Most people believe life in prison is more humane than execution. They argue that prisoners have hope, they can appeal, they have a chance at life. But after learning about Misty's reality, that argument becomes more complicated. Consider what death row actually looks like. Inmates are segregated in individual cells. They have extensive access to appeals. Their cases receive constant review. Advocacy groups monitor their treatment. Courts scrutinize execution methods for constitutional violations. The ACLU and other organizations fight vigorously for death row inmates. Now consider Misty's situation. She is in the general population at a facility where federal investigators documented systemic abuse. No advocacy groups are fighting for her. No extensive appeals process protects her. No courts are examining whether her daily conditions constitute cruel and unusual punishment. Death row inmates do not wake up wondering if they will be assaulted that day. They do not navigate a chaotic general population environment for decades. They do not face the grinding psychological toll of year after year in conditions officially deemed inadequate, knowing they have many more years to endure. A person on death row has a definitive end, whether through execution or natural causes. They know their fate. Misty knows hers too. 21 years total in a place described by former inmates as hell on earth, if she survives it. Misty was 18 when sentenced. Neuroscience tells us the brain does not fully mature until age 25. She was essentially a teenager when she received what amounts to a life-destroying punishment for selling prescription pills. But consider what it means to lose your entire youth this way. No relationships, no career, no family, no opportunity to learn from mistakes and grow as a person. Just day after day in a place where safety and dignity are constantly under threat. The isolation is profound. Her mother died while she was incarcerated. She cannot attend family events or comfort loved ones. She cannot experience simple joys most people take for granted, like watching a sunset freely or choosing what to eat. And hovering over everything is the ghost of Haley Cummings. Investigators still question Misty regularly even after 15 years. The community still suspects her. She carries that weight every single day regardless of what the truth actually is. Meanwhile, Ronald Cummings served just 12 years for his role in the same drug operation and was released in October 2022. 2 months later, he was arrested again for drug possession and violently resisting an officer. As of December 2025, he remains in Putnam County Jail. Yet he received 10 years less than Misty for similar crimes. Just this month, February 10th marked 16 years since Haley disappeared. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children released a new age progression photo showing what Haley would look like now at age 21. She would be in college or starting a career. Those opportunities were stolen from her, and her family deserves answers. But Misty was never charged with anything related to Haley's disappearance. She was convicted of selling drugs, for which she received a punishment far exceeding what similar offenders typically get. The question is not whether selling drugs should be punished. The question is whether using unrelated charges to punish suspected involvement in an unsolved case is justice. and whether condemning someone to decades in an abusive facility serves any legitimate purpose. Misty Croslin's case exposes several failures in our system. Excessive sentences for non-violent drug offenses, using criminal charges as leverage in unsolved cases, horrific conditions in women's prisons that often go unnoticed, lack of accountability when abuse is documented. Young offenders are treated as harshly as career criminals. If Misty was involved in Haley's disappearance, that is a serious crime deserving consequences. But the way to get answers is not through excessive sentences on unrelated charges hoping to coerce cooperation. And regardless of what anyone believes about her guilt, can we agree that no one should spend decades in a facility where abuse is systemic? Death penalty opponents argue execution is cruel and unusual punishment. They may be right, but what about condemning someone to decades in a place where abuse is routine and safety is not guaranteed? Where does the psychological toll accumulate year after year with no real hope of improvement? A death sentence, however controversial, has an end. But this is something different. A slow erosion of dignity and hope stretched across decades in conditions federal investigators found unconstitutional. And 5 years after that Justice Department report, many advocates say little has meaningfully changed at Lowell. When Misty Croslin walks out of Lowell in 2031, if she makes it that far, she will be 39 years old. She will have spent 21 years in a place where abuse is documented and systematic. She will owe over $1.5 million in fines she can never pay. She will face 5 more years of probation. And she will carry the stigma of this case forever. So here is what I want you to consider. After hearing this story, after learning about the documented conditions at Lowell, after understanding what 15 years has already meant and what 6 more years will mean, do you still believe life imprisonment is automatically more humane than execution? Or does it depend on where that life is spent and under what conditions? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Has this changed your perspective? Do you think the punishment fits the crime? And what should we do about prisons like Lowell when federal investigations document abuse but little changes? These questions matter because Misty's experience is not unique. Thousands of women face similar conditions. And if we are going to incarcerate people, we have a responsibility to ensure humane treatment. As of today, Haley Cummings has been missing for almost 16 years. Her case remains unsolved. Misty Croslin remains in Lowell Correctional Institution. And the question remains whether the pursuit of answers about one tragedy has created another. If this made you think differently, hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into cases that challenge how we see justice. Share this with someone who needs to hear it, because understanding these complexities is how we push for real change. The truth is rarely simple, but it is always worth examining.